You're watching the Forefront Church video podcast, and wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message. Good morning, 8:30. How are we doing today? Doing well? You guys are excited. You got that extra hour of sleep. You're good to go. We are in week 5 of our 8-week series, Church for the City. And we started this out looking at, we live in the city of Virginia Beach, or for many of us we do. We also have people that travel quite a distance to be here and be a part of this community. But we have our roots laid here in Virginia Beach. And so we started thinking as a church, what does it really mean to be a church for our city, not just simply a church in our city? And so to learn that example, we said, all right, well, as we're doing these series, which we plan a year in advance, let's look at some of the examples that we can find that are written about during the time of Jesus in the early church that we can glean some better understanding of that. And so one of the churches that we hear about in the context of the Bible is this church in Greece, in the city of Corinth. And the books that are written, 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians in the New Testament of the Bible, it's a city that is much like Virginia Beach, population, all of these different things that happen being a seaport town and some of the things that were taking place and very diverse. We go, man, there's a lot that we can help to kind of understand from that. In the first week that we jumped in, we learned very quickly, and so if you haven't been with us, you get a little kind of Cliff Notes version. First week we jumped in, we realized, wow, God has already equipped us with everything that we need to go out and help other people. That everything that we need to go and care for one another, that you don't have to have a PhD in theological studies, that you don't need to go to Bible college and seminary and all these things to go and care for your neighbor across the street. That these are the things that we're able to do. And not only that, we started learning over the next few weeks, not only was there some stuff that the church at Corinth did well that we can go, man, that's awesome. There were also some things that they were doing that weren't so great. That there were some, cliques and divisiveness that was going on, that there were ways that they were starting to really worship more of the things around them than God himself, that they even were moving into repetitive sin patterns that were happening, missing the mark that God had for them. And it was impacting the way that they could go out into their city and care for other people because people were looking at them going, you're supposed to be different. At least that's what we've heard. And if there's supposed to be life change, how can we see that in your life? Because we would follow this Jesus if you actually looked like the Jesus that you follow. And so over the last few weeks, we've kind of explored that. And today we're really going to get into that if you and I want to go out and care for others, what is the impact of our lives if we continue in the ways that we were before? And if you're new with us this morning, I'm so thankful that you're here in a part. Man, I love that we get to be a community where there's people who are unsure about God, that you're mad at God, that you don't even know or believe whether or not God exists, to people that are fully following. But that spectrum isn't like these people get it and these people don't. That is all of us journeying this direction towards Jesus. And the fact that we're here, I love that we get to be a part of that. And so before we jump into today's message, I want to pray for us, that any obstacles that we'd have would get removed in the next 26 minutes we have left together. You guys good with that? Do we pray? God, I thank you for today. We thank you for your church, that we get to be a part of this. That church isn't something that we come to. The church is who we are. This building is great. Future facilities are wonderful. Lights and heat and warm coffee, all of that's great. But if you take away all of that, the church still exists. And I'm thankful that we get to be a part of this and that you would give us the opportunity today, that whatever we walked in with, the walls that we've built up, the anger that we have, the unforgiveness that we're holding on to towards someone, the hurt that's happening in our relationships and marriages and with our children, with loved ones that are just, it's wreaking havoc in our lives. Maybe it's a diagnosis that we got that has just wounded us and we're coming today hoping for relief. God, today, would you take all of our hurts and pains and shortcomings, and that you would do what you can do and only you can do, which is the miraculous, so that we can listen with fresh ears and open hearts to hear what you have for us. God, we thank you and we love you. It's in the name of Jesus we pray this morning. Amen. Now, I don't know about you, but there was a toy that growing up, I got pretty frustrated with. It was a toy that you would try to maneuver and get it. And well, let me just show you what that toy was. How many of you wanted to throw this across a room at one time or another? Yeah. If you're not familiar with this, where have you been hiding? This is a Rubik's Cube. Now, this is transparency time, friends. How many of you already know it's coming, took the stickers off and put them back to solve it? See, I appreciate your honesty. Rubik's has since made it more difficult because now they are inlaid and no longer stickers. So you can't do that anymore. Your life is now ruined. And that was mine, and I would do it. And one of the things that I would always try to do along the way is I would at least try to get one whole side, because then I was making it, boy. Like, I could do it. I have a goal, I have a goal that by 70, I can solve one of these within a week's time. Like, that's my goal. I know there's other kids on YouTube that can be like, here, and you're like, yeah, all right. But it's fascinating to me what they can do with this. And actually, there was a guy that was on America's Got Talent that did some pretty fascinating things, illusion-wise, with this. So why don't you guys take a moment and check this out?
Awesome. So we're going to try something with the Rubik's Cube. We're going to mix it up on all 6 sides. Now, there's 43 quintillion different ways you can mix it up, so watch that close. Completely mix it up, one-handed in the bag as fully as possible. Back to solve. I think you have a guess on how I do that, right? Some people guess there's a second cube in the bag. I will prove the bag is empty. Look, I'll check. Completely empty. Completely empty.
Can I look in it?
Absolutely.
Very good.
Simon, I'm going to do something that's never been done before on TV. Simon, can you actually mix up that Rubik's Cube? Turn it as much as you want. Now, every time you turn it, that's a different one of those 43 quintillion permutations. Simon, whenever you're happy, I will take the cube that you just mixed up and put it back in the bag. Watch that close. Simon's mixed up Rubik's Cube.
Well, that's incredible.
That would be an amazing trick if there was not a second Rubik's Cube in the bag. But that's not the trick. I'm making sure you're still paying attention. Simon, can you actually cover it up on all 6 sides? Cover it up? Perfect, like that. Yeah. Now, when you think of a solved Rubik's Cube, what do you actually picture?
Solids.
Colors, right? What if I told you that I found a different solution to the Rubik's Cube? Watch close. Right about there. See, the different solution was to match the Rubik's Cube that Simon mixed up 30 seconds ago.
You have.
No.
So if I did match it, you're going to notice we have one side that's going to be a completely perfect match.
Magic is real.
Better than one side, though. That's going to be side number 2. That is 3. That is 4. That is
So the whole time we were up here, I was like, I'm going to see if I can get the white side and more sides. And yeah, that didn't work out, as you can clearly see. I heard somebody whisper, like, he's figuring it out. No, I'm not. You know what's fascinating to me about this? Like this, there is a mathematical equation that you can use, and you can go online, and if you get a Rubik's Cube, you could start typing in like 3 of the sides, and it will give you like within like 10 moves or less how you can do it to be able to solve the Rubik's Cube. And for some of you, you're gonna go home and try that, and it's awesome. But one of the things that I love about this is it takes a unique and keen time to detail and be able to sit down and solve this out the way that it needs to be solved. There's only one way that a Rubik's Cube is actually whole. It's when all the sides are over. And I love the way that he did it, which is actually even harder, is to go around and make it match and whatever. And I don't know how he did that. My mind's blown. But what I love is that in our lives, God doesn't just get one side correct. He doesn't just get a piece of us correct. He actually corrects every single bit of who we are that has been dislodged from our sin, from our shame, from our hurt, our regret. But you know what? There's plenty of times that, much like when I would solve a side and I would run to my mom or my dad and go, hey, look, I've just decided, and they're like, that's awesome, buddy. And what they're thinking of is like, well, that's great a little bit, but not really. Why? Because I didn't do the whole thing. But for us, when we get over one battle in God, we go, oh, look at me. I did the one side, completely ignoring the other pieces of what's happening. You see, God isn't in the business of just getting you partially together. God is uniquely crafting you and I in such a way that we are being molded to be made new, to be a new creation. Not, and we talked about this last week, we used the 3 vases, the bag of broken pieces, the kind of put together, glued together broken pieces, and then the bigger, taller, better, completely whole vase. And for many of us, we sit in that broken state that somehow, some way, God has put us together, but we're still a little broken. It's the way of giving ourselves permission to keep doing the things that we've always done. I'm a little rough around the edges. You know, I grew up, I have a friend that grew up in New York. I'm from New York, and we're just rough people. And I go, but you love Jesus, so you're no longer rough. You've been made new. Well, you know what? I've had a hard childhood, and my childhood and the things that have happened to me have kind of unhinged me, and I've gone through loss, and I've gone through grief, and I've gone through, and we stack up all these things, and we go, God has healed this piece, but the rest of me, you just don't get it because. And what we say when we say those things over time, now I'm not saying that those things aren't being refined inside of you with God's help and movement, but at some point we have to be able to say, God is in the business of taking dead things and making them alive, not in the business of piecing things together, sort of. You see, if we don't get anything else, my prayer is that we get this, that God transforms all of you, all of me. He transforms all of us, so use everything to honor him and care for others, not just a piece of your life. Well, you know what? I honor God because I show up and I open a door on Sunday mornings, which is awesome. But are you caring for people at work? Are you looking out for your neighbor? Are you really angry because they haven't moved that one trailer that's in their driveway and you've complained about it to the city and on Facebook? Or do you go over there and say, is there any way that I could help you with that? Am I really going to care? Am I going to get very angry at a restaurant at a waitress because she got my order wrong, which usually isn't the waitress's fault, it's the people in the back. But even then, the people in the back, what happened if something got miscommunicated because she or he are having a very difficult time? But we just want to launch into it because I ordered what I ordered. Well, maybe you need to get over you. You see, in these pieces, God is transforming and making us completely new. And so everything that we do should overflow. We say that our life should ooze hope and generosity, that everything that we live out would do this. But here's the problem. Sin dislodges us from that very movement. And in the passage we're going to look at today, if you have a Bible, turn over to 1 Corinthians chapter 6. It's in the New Testament of the Bible. We're going to look specifically at one particular fall from what God's designed, where we actually, more so than anything else, God specifically talks about this instance, this movement of sin, and goes, it actually unhinges your reputation when you want to go out and love people. Now, all sin does that. But he specifically notes this one through Paul, the writer, saying, listen, there's some things that are happening that aren't okay. And let's talk about them. Because you want to go and care for people well. Well, I don't know that your reputation is going to be able to do that if you're continuing in these things. And so, hey, you want to be a church for the city? Let's talk about your life first. And so in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, Paul, the writer who started the church, writes this letter back, notes it starting in verse 12. He says, I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. And so we see this, all things are permissible as we're looking at this, but not everything's beneficial. And so we would see these things like, yeah, sure, I have every opportunity, if I wanted to sit and eat Cheetos all day long. That would be my right. I have to do it. No one's going to come and stand on my door with, with firearms going, Jason, stop eating Cheetos all day long. Now, my family may have something to say about that when I can no longer fit through my doorway because I've sat and ate Cheetos every day all day long. But just because, and we see these things, well, just because it's permissible, I see people do this, especially on the topic of alcohol. Well, just because it's permissible. I love the fact that people have the freedom to choose what they do. But if you have a long line of people who are alcoholics or people that are dying from alcoholism or people that struggle with alcohol, here's a thought. Maybe you should not drink around them or make it a big deal around them, or maybe you could abstain because this life is not about you. Now, I think it's fine if you want to have a drink, but how do we do that? And so this is what the writer's getting at here, Paul is. He says, I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. So it's a great question. What are you being mastered by? You say, food for the stomach and the stomach for food, and God will destroy them both. This is just ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The body, however, is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and for the Lord for the body. We're going to get into some of this. By his power, God raised the Lord from the dead, and he will raise us also. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ himself? And so we are, the imagery that happens here, if you're not familiar with the biblical context, is that God is over all. He is the head, and in Christ, and then we see the church is the body. We are the hands and feet moving from the spiritual to the natural, what we see in and out of our community in the name of Jesus. He's saying, and so he notes this with this. So he said, shall then take the members of Christ and unite them with a prostitute. So he's saying, should sexual immorality be something that a Christian should be a part of? Never. So do you not know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her body? For it is said, the two will become one flesh. But whoever is united with the Lord is one with him in spirit. And so it's interesting, and I would say this, that God views all sin the same. All sin is missing the mark from what God designed. And so whether you tell a little white lie or whether you murder somebody, you are, in fact, missing the mark that God has for you. Now, for some of you go, whoa, and if you're, that's a little harsh, Jason. I know I said to my mom when she asked about the cookie, and I told her no when I was 10. You're equating that to that. It's I don't make the rules. I'm just the messenger. And so don't kill the messenger. Listen to what it is. It's the heart behind it. Is our heart moving in a direction that's away from God? So what is it about sexual sin that's somehow noted differently? And the way that I would liken this, and so this won't go well for video podcast, but I think it works for us, is duct tape is pretty strong, right? You can fix, if you're good, you can fix anything with duct tape. All right? Absolutely anything. But, it's meant to, you stick it, and then what do? You leave it on. You leave it alone. Now, here's the thing with duct tape and any kind of tape. Now, I stick it on my hand, and I'm good. I've already stuck it on stuff, and so I'm going to walk over, And I'm just gonna, stick that on you. And so that's gonna maybe come off. And we're gonna go ahead, and I know Emmy, she comes to our student ministry. Hey, Emmy, how are you? And I'm gonna stick it was a little bit easier. And I'm gonna even stick it, John was in the band, volunteer of the week, what? And so we're gonna do that in here. That's gonna feel good on the arm here. Oh, that's all right. And we're gonna do just a little over here. And what's happening? It's losing its stickiness. What's fascinating about sexual sin, among all other things, and actually it's probably not as much fascinating as it is saddening, is that over time, when you say it's not a big deal, it's only intimacy, it's not a big deal, it's only hopping on a computer. We live within an age where, and it breaks my heart because this is something that sexual sin before coming to faith was something that I was, and I don't need to go through all the ins and outs because it doesn't concern you, but my life was not okay. And what this does, when people say, oh, it's just casual intimacy. You see, God had a design for that. And God had a plan for that. That once that is united, that nothing would come in between that moment. And you see, every time that tape was done, whether or not you and I can see it, it leaves a little bit of residue with you. And then with you, and then with you, and then with you. And so we watch this happen. And so the church at large, their reaction when I was growing up was, stop, don't date, don't hold hands, don't do anything, whatever, love Jesus. And there was this whole movement called True Love Waits, which is and there was a book called I Kiss Dating Goodbye, and all of this stuff. And it was a nightmare. And I was like, Christians are weird. This is one of the biggest reasons that I went to church but didn't like faith, because Christians were bizarre to me. But the answer isn't to swing the pendulum and say, oh, girls cover up, guys cover your eyes. It's to honor it for what it is and to treat it as God has asked us to treat it, which is why Paul says to this church, as he's talking about this, he says, listen, I know this is happening. So flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are what? Outside the body. And this is not saying that it's worse. Please don't hear that. Don't go home and go, oh, we learned today that sexual sin is worse than every other sin. Stop it. That's not what we're saying. Let's clarify that now. We don't need that Twitter feed anywhere. What we are saying, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body and the body of the person that they are with. You and I are now, when we commit sexual sin, are now roping other individuals into this. Now you may say, well, Jason, if it's not because we live in a day and age where we could get on devices and see all kinds of things, well, that's not roping anybody else in. Well, it is. If this is the thing that weighs so heavy on me. There's movements now. People say, well, we're living in the greatest time we've ever lived in. Do you know that modern day slavery, people within slavery, is the highest that it's ever been in our world's history? So before we say, and why is it that way? Because of the sex trade. The sex industry has roped in so many individuals through abduction, through pornography. Chances are, if you've ever sat down and watched a video online, you've seen at least one or more people that were involved in sex trade. And they did not want to be there on their own will. It gets real quiet. You want to know why? Because it doesn't matter where you go, whether it's a church or out in a mall food court or at a football game, you can look down a row of any point in time, anywhere that you go, and statistically, one within 4 people, it doesn't matter male or female, are battling pornography addiction or sexual addiction of some kind. So this isn't a Christianity issue. It's not a world out there issue. It is people are dealing with this. So Paul, writing these words, we go, whoa, wait a second. Paul, you were actually before your time. Why? Because there's nothing new under the sun. Maybe we find ways to do it differently, but it's still the same thing. So he says, do you not know that your bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you've received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your what? Bodies. Now, you may be sitting here today going, well, that's not my thing. Every one of us has a thing. Which is why, even though it notes this, we say God transforms all of you. And so everything that you do, use it to honor him and care for others. So the question that we should ask in this is, what is the impact of sin on God, us, and others? How can we learn from this so we can say, all right, God, I want to make sure that I'm honoring you. God, I don't want to be somebody who is just this. Now listen, if this has been your life, I want you to know that this is a safe place for you to be, learn, grow, and be made new. That there is no condemnation. I have met people on every part of the spectrum who have walked through things, and God can redeem you. You are never too far gone. The guy who started this church that we're studying, who wrote this book, killed Christians for a living. Is that on your resume? Then you're okay. If he can use him, he can use you. And these things, God is not going to leave you haphazardly undone. See, the things that we learn in this is that sin breaks the heart of God and those involved. When Jesus was writing in what's known in the biblical text as the triumphant entry, it was moments before eventually he would be arrested and put on trial, a sham of a trial, multiple trials, and eventually killed and conquered death. As he was coming in, everybody was celebrating. There's palm leaves. They're all like, Jesus, we love you, whoever. I mean, it was like people were losing their minds. It's like when all of a sudden Kanye released a worship album and everybody's flipping out. Like everybody's going on, which months later they're like, we don't like rap music. And then like rap. And so this whole thing is happening. This whole thing's taking place. And Jesus is coming. And you would think Jesus would be like, man, these people are awesome. I love it. I love that they're shouting my name. They love God. What is Jesus' response? So he approached Jerusalem and he saw the city. He wept over it. He cried. And he said, if you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. You see, even in that moment of celebration, they couldn't even see the sin that was inside of them, that was going to bubble up in just a few days. That just a few days later, they were going to turn on him, and the same people singing, Jesus, you are awesome, because of all the sin that was inside of them, because the lives that they were living would be the same ones that would say, crucify him, put him to death. Now, the temptation for us is to say, man, that's heavy. That would never be me. That would never be me. I meet people who share that, and I get it. I'm the same way. There's accounts that happen in the Bible, and you may hear something, you go, oh, I would be the champion of the story. I would be the person that wouldn't do that. I would be I would stand up, and I would make a difference. Here's the problem. There are very few men and women who stood up and actually did the right thing all throughout the context of history. Chances are, no matter how great that we believe that we could be, we are all fallible and messed up. And so the chances are we would have been the same ones in the crowd both times. You see, that sin breaks the heart of God and breaks the heart of the others who are involved in that. Not only that sin weakens our resolve. How many of you, once you started feeling a little stressed, have ever gotten sick during a time of stress? Yeah, and the reason being wasn't necessarily because you had like the bug that was coming over. Your body, due to stress, your immune system gets what? Weakened. Yeah. And so the moment that happens, the moment that your body is susceptible to those things, the other things creep in, and it's like they're waiting on the line. They're like, hold. release the Kraken. And then like everything comes in and it just destroys you from the inside out. I don't understand why I have a headache and I'm tired and I'm sick and I'm snotty and I'm in the bathroom like, oh, doctor, Jesus, take me home. Like we're so overwhelmed. Here's the thing. When you are living in one repetitive, not addressing its sin, it is very easy for other things to begin to creep in and get a foothold. You go, that's not me. Time and examples in history would say that you're wrong. And I don't say that to discourage you. I say that because it's an opportunity to encourage us to say, I want to make sure that I am really watching what is happening. That's why Paul, right in Romans, says, therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body so that you obey its evil desires. Don't let one thing get a foothold because, and this one is huge, sin tarnishes our reputation in a culture that expects us to be different. The reason that people that don't claim faith get down on the church at large is because Christians don't practice what they preach. And so for every moment of like the Westboro Baptist Church showing up at funerals and yelling and screaming and doing whatever, it's same equated with the talking head that happens on Fox News or CNN or wherever you watch news that bends towards whatever you believe because you want to listen to an echo chamber. It's true. You know, these people, and so then all of that is equated to your life. So the moment that you or I drop the ball, any pastor in America, any religious leader in America, the moment that they fall, there goes Christians. You get labeled with that. I get labeled with that. That's why I love the way the writer of Ephesians shares it. Therefore, having put away falsehood, let each one of you speak the truth with his neighbor. For we are members of one another. Be angry, yet do not sin. You can get angry. You can have moments that just don't sin in it. Do not let the sun go down on your anger and give no opportunity to the devil. Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor and do honest work with his two hands so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths. We have a 2020 election coming up. The best thing you can do, care for people. Care for people. I know there's a comment section. Stop. The moment that you feel like doing that, go mow a lawn. The moment you feel like doing that, go out to eat and buy somebody else's meal. The moment that you feel like doing that, ask a friend to come over that you haven't normally had over and just share life with them. Let no corrupt talk come out of your mouth, but only as such that is good for building up, that it may give grace to those here. Because our reputation matters. I don't know if you guys remember this guy here. Anybody remember this kid? Who is that? Balloon Boy. This kid, 10 years ago, almost to the day, media firestorm. Parents call the police. There are people from all over. Our boy got in a weather balloon and he's up there. And they're chasing the weather balloon. It's on national news. Forget OJ and the white Bronco. We're following the balloon. And we're just like, where's it going to go? Where's it going to land? What's going to happen? And then, come to find out, Balloon Boy wasn't in the balloon. He was hiding in his attic. And they interviewed him on Good Morning America. And during the interview, they have the entire family there. And he slips and he goes, well, we did this for the show and the cameras. Everything changed for their family. For the last 10 years, the husband and the wife, they pled guilty to the charges. For the last 10 years, they created a website and have been trying to regain their name within their community. He can't find jobs. He's had a hard time making money for his family because anyone that sees him, even his kids, they ended up having to bring them home and homeschool them because they were known as the family that lied. They're the family that caused a big mess within their community. And so 10 years later, they interviewed him on the anniversary, the dad and mom and a couple of the kids this past week. He said, I'm still fighting, still. He's like, we didn't do it. He wasn't hiding. We thought he was in there the whole bit, trying to undo the narrative that had already been done. Don't for a moment believe that your sin does not follow you around with others. God wipes the slate clean. But what we do in this life, people will notice. And so, if we're going to follow God well, God transforms all of you, not just a piece. So use everything to honor him and care for others, because people that don't claim faith are watching you, whether you believe it or not. And we want to be serious about our love for Jesus. It should come out of every part of who we are. And when we do, just like the logo that you see, that the world is turned upside down with the love of Jesus. But God, in his divine wisdom, decided the best way to do that is through you. So what are you doing to care for others? It starts with a connection with Jesus. And I promise when you begin there, you will never be disappointed. But that choice is yours. Will you choose it? Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. Click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you, or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab, as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in. And we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you, and we'll see you then.